Hi, I'm Pat Ehlers from the Fly Fishers in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If you like bonefish, and I've got a fly here, the Bonefish Reaper, it's a new pattern of mine that I think you're really going to like. It's an easy fly to tie, and I'd like to show you how to do that right now. So come on along and let's get one tied up. All right, here's the list of materials that I'm using to tie the Bonefish Reaper fly. I'm using a Daiichi X-Point saltwater hook in size 4, stainless steel. The thread I'm using is a 6/0 uni thread. Color is pink. For the eyes, I'm using a medium white painted lead eye. For the tail, I'm using a white medium Reaper tail from Hairline Dubbin. And then to get the tan color that I want, I'm using a sand colored marking pen from Chart Pack. For the body, I'm using a light brown rabbit strip, and I'm doing that in a dubbing loop. And to help keep that in the dubbing loop, we're using a super sticky dubbing wax. And then to finish the fly off, I'm using a Bonefish Pink Crystal Flash. This is a proprietary color to Hairline. That's where you get this, is through Hairline Dubbin. And then the final thing I'm using is another Hairline Dubbin product called Loco Legs, and I'm using that in a tan color. All right, let's get the Bonefish Reaper going here. So I got my hook in the vise, using a size 4 stainless steel hook, because potentially we're going to use these in saltwater, but a little trick is we found that smallmouth like them here in our rivers, and steelhead even eat them too. So we're just going to get thread started, and about a third of the way back, I'm going to mount my eyes up on the top. I want some room up in front of this to tie off my body, and I don't want to crowd that head with the eyes. So I'm just going to figure 8 these eyes on here. Get it good and locked in. I'm using a pair of medium lead eyes in a white color. Take your thread, go over the top of the hook shank and around those thread wraps under the eyes. That'll help to lock those in place. And then take your thread back to a point over the barb of the hook. And then before you finish that off, we're just going to take a spot of this liquid fusion, lock those eyes in place. I always tell people when I'm doing them, glue your eyes in, because they will work loose if you don't. And that liquid fusion is nice. It'll bleed down into the thread. Take a while to dry, but that's all right, because it'll lock all your other materials. You're going to wrap over it later anyhow. So just get that on there, we're good to go. Then I'm going to take a medium-sized Reaper tail, but I just take that little tag end, lay it up on top of the hook shank, wrap that on there. And I want that fly to be, that tail to be flat on there. You can see it's flat, so just tie it in that way. Don't be afraid to make another wrap up and down the hook shank to bind that down real well. Now I'm just going to let my thread hang there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to use rabbit fur to wrap this, to make the body out of. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a dubbing loop. So I'm going to use a Griffin spinning loop tool. We're going to take some light brown rabbit strip, zonker strip, and I'm going to get this put into a spinning loop. So I'm going to get that spinning loop ready. And what I do is I take my thread and I bring this down, make a couple of wraps around the shank to lock that in. Now to close this loop on the top side here, I'm just going to take my thread and a bobbin and wrap around that loop. You can see how that's tightened that up a little bit now instead of being wide open. I can control that better. And I'm going to bring my thread all the way up in front of the eyes. And I'm going to take my spinning loop tool, and I really like this. This is my favorite tool for using spinning loops on, because when I put that in there, the weight of the handle, when you let it go, it'll pull this thread together to lock your stuff in place, whatever material you're using. And as soon as you back off, the spring action of this opens up the loop to be able to insert more. So I'm going to get that ready, and you don't want this thing to twist, so just let it hang somewhere where that's not going to twist and get all tied up on there. Now this is a little bit of the tricky part here. The first thing I'm going to do is one of the sides, I'm just going to take some super sticky dubbing wax, because I don't want that thread or the rabbit sliding out of the thread. And I'm just going to coat the hook with that. Try to get that off your fingers. So I've got the thread prepared, and I'm going to let that loop hang. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this zonker strip, and I'm going to grab some of this. And I usually do this on my lap, but you won't see what I'm doing with the way the camera's situated here. So I'm just going to grab a thumb and finger full of this rabbit fur. And I'm going to open my loop up. And I'm just going to insert that in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this around inside of that loop. And I'm going to let the tension of that spinning loop tool hang there. Close that thread around it so it doesn't slide around. Between that sticky wax and the weight of that tool, you shouldn't lose that rabbit fur in there. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to relax the tension a little bit, and I'm going to slide another clump of that in there. I'm going to move that around so I got a nice distribution of that rabbit fur in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this right below my last clump of rabbit hair, and I'm just going to take and I'm going to spin that tool while I hang on to that with my thumb and forefinger, and then just let go, and it becomes a nice fur rope. Every time that spins, that locks all that rabbit hair in place. And don't worry if you use too much. I'd rather have too long of a piece of this, because we can just trim it off like a piece of chenille. And I just keep spinning it here, make sure it's good and tight. And this is where I really like the spinning loop tool, because I don't have to do it. You can do these with hackle pliers or loops, but I really like this tool because the tension on that, now I can just wrap this and it's not going to come out of there. Now as I get that up there, I'm just going to start stroking that rabbit fur back with each wrap. Watch the point of the hook there. And this is going to fill that body up. Make sure your tail stays flat in there. Once you get rolling, you'll be in good shape. And now all we're doing is we're just coming up the shank of the hook. When I get to the eyes, I just figure 8 over those. Come back up in front. Hold that back out of the way, make a couple of wraps. Take your left hand, put a few wraps in there to tie that thread off. Got lucky on that one and guessed just right. Trim that out of there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull these fibers back and wrap my way back towards the eyes. And I'm going to turn the fly over, and you can pull out that rabbit fur. Comb it out a little bit. And because we've got this fly riding hook up, I'm going to want the crystal flash that I'm going to put on here, my loco legs that give the impression of a shrimp swimming backwards and all the legs folding up. So I want those on the inside of the bend of the hook, the upside down part of it here. So I'm just going to take, and notice I just trimmed the corner of my crystal flash bag here so I can keep that all nice and neat in there. Just go in with my hook, or excuse me, hook that with the point of my scissors, trim off what I need. Now I've got a nice neat package left there. And I'm just going to take the crystal flash, go around the thread that I've got. And that locks it in place as I tie it in there. Then I'm going to come back and I want to get my length to be just short of that tail. Trim that off. Radiate that around the top of the hook shank. And now I'm going to use these local legs. It's a silicone leg. It's another product just like Crazy Legs. It's just got some different colors in the local leg packages. And I'm going to take, there's a skirt that connects the two ends of this. And I'm going to take 3 of these separate pieces here and just strip them off. And just like I did with the Crystal Flash, I'm just going to pull that around the thread, distribute it so it's halfway on each side, draw that up on top, and that way when I finish the fly I don't have any tag ends that are stuck out the thread going forward. And don't be afraid to use a few extra wraps of thread on here because you've got to compress those local legs. Now once I've got them bound down, same thing about the length of that Crystal Flash. Trim that off. Now we got all kinds of nice wiggly action on there, and I'm going to pull all these threads back from the rabbit fur. Make a nice neat head on there, cover up everything. Whip finish that. Now I just take my scissors, I just lay them against the thread and I pull the thread against my scissors. That way I'm not going in there cutting off any of the fur body I created. I've got a couple little flyers in there that we can just go give that a little haircut to. Make it nice and neat. Put a little spot of glue, head cement on there. And there's our finished Bonefish Reaper.